Oh man, this is just... Oh. Okay, let's just get this over with.
First, I want to show you phi and Fibonacci. It's important to understand for what we're going to talk about.
More sacred geometry, yeah. Oh, man, this is too dumb.
The length of A plus B is equal to the length of C. This ratio is 1.6180339 and continues on forever.
Well, good enough, I suppose.
It is also believed that phi is the mathematical root of all other sequences.
No, as we will see later on, it's not.
The next thing that you need to know is that this ratio is found in all life everywhere.
Nope, that's a myth, and here's why.
Look at your hand. Not only does each finger have its own ratio moving up each finger, which is phi to the next bone, but it oscillates back and forth from the tallest finger to the thumb.
We all know from having observed quite a few hands that not all hands have the same proportions. And a similar argument can be made for virtually every occurrence, or alleged occurrence, I should say, of phi in living organisms.
Let's move on to our next sequence, which is called Fibonacci. Allow me to explain. This sequence is continually made from adding the previous number to the current. 1 and 1 is 2, 2 and 1 is 3, 3 and 2 is 5, 5 and 3 is 8. You can see how it continues.
Correct, and the ratio between two successive Fibonacci numbers gets closer and closer to phi as the sequence progresses.
Let's look at some spirals in nature, another way that phi and Fibonacci can manifest.
What you find in nature is a lot of logarithmic spirals, and a golden spiral is a specific logarithmic spiral. Not all logarithmic spirals are golden spirals.
This also happens with sunflowers, pine cones, and many plants in nature. In many cases, such as the pine cones and sunflowers, it flows in a double spiral or more.
Yeah, so Fibonacci numbers are found in a lot of plants, and that's a mathematical consequence of how they grow, but I'm not going to spend any time on this. I really don't see the point.
So phi is basically source, or spirit, or God, in a mathematical way of thinking.
No, it's a number. Okay, I'll grant you that it's a pretty cool number that has a lot of cool properties, and it shows up quite a lot in some places where you might not intuitively expect it to show up, but it's just a number. Maybe you should stop drooling over mathematics and start learning some. Then you'll realize that this spiritual mumbo-jumbo is just something you impose. Once you realize how mathematics works, you'll realize that all the cool stuff in it, all those things where people might go, whoa, that can't be a coincidence, that has to mean something. All of those are just logical consequences of definitions and axioms. For example, the angles of a triangle in Euclidean geometry add up to 180 degrees. This is true for all triangles. And it isn't a coincidence, nor is it divine design or magic or anything like that. The angles add up to 180 degrees because it would be logically impossible for them not to.
The only other sequence you need to know for this is binary sequences. This is a sequence like 2, 4, 8, 16, 32. We're just doubling the last number instead of adding it to the previous one.
And that's a perfect example of a sequence that has nothing to do with phi. Told ya.
If you plot a golden mean spiral at 0 degrees on the polar graph, it will loop all the way around before hitting 0 again, exactly at the 8th circle. You'll find that this golden mean line crosses 5 specific places as it goes out. These places are where the female circular lines meet the male lines.
Not that this matters, none of this has any meaning other than what is arbitrarily assigned to it, but what Jordan drew is not actually a golden spiral. I took the liberty of plotting one myself, adjusting it so that r of 2 pi equals 8. It doesn't hit the intersections he says it does. So apparently this isn't just bullshit, it's bullshit based on bad math.
Do you remember the face on Mars? NASA obviously tells us that it's just a random formation on the surface of the planet. But right next to the face, there are also a few pyramids and other anthropomorphic structures.
Yeah, those are also natural features.
Well, Richard Hoagland and his colleagues have spent a long time researching and deciphering a message on the surface of the red planet. Want to know what that message was?
Oh, this is gonna be stupid.
It was a star tetrahedron inscribed in a sphere.
So they drew a bunch of lines on a map and then figured out how to turn that into what they wanted to see. And it still doesn't mean anything.
It's pretty crazy.
Exactly.
You'll notice that this smaller tetrahedron also happens to fit perfectly around this sphere. Well, check this out. If you put this same size sphere centered on the point of every single star tetrahedral point...
Yeah, sure, that's cool, I guess. There's a nice symmetry there in the geometry that makes this possible. But it doesn't mean anything.
What this means is that all of the information of music, harmonics, sound, and spirals come out of this image. Not only that, but light and the dimensional levels work in the same way as harmonics, which we've already discussed in lesson 2, 7, and 9, meaning that the geometric information about light and dimensions are also related to this star tetrahedron pattern.
If these patterns hold all this knowledge, then please use one of them to make an actual, testable, non-trivial prediction about observable reality. I'm sure you can use these patterns to predict all sorts of cool stuff about the seventh vibratory quantum dimension of the thought realm, but once there's a way to check if your predictions are correct, I'm pretty sure the magic 8-ball will say ask again later.
This also happens with sunflowers, pine cones,